4, 2. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. I'm Aisha.
And I'm Rhonda right.
And we are the Sol Sistas. If you're new here, this channel is all about spirituality. It's about expansion.
And also wellness and sisterhood. So if any of those things interest you, be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification button because we want you to be here for this and all other episodes that we will be bringing to you.
Yes, and today we are back with another video. We're going to dive into the magical connection we have with our inner child and our higher self. Yes, if you missed our very first video, we were talking about dismantling some of the myths around women getting along and some of the things that you can do to find your soul tribe. So go and check that video out. We're going to probably leave it in the description or link it I know sometimes videos are linked like in the upper corner, so we'll see if we can do that as well. But definitely check that out.
For sure. We are here for you. Which means we want to hear from you. Your voice is an important part of this conversation. It's a conversation, a dialogue, right? So we'd love for you to leave some comments down below to let us know that you're here. Let us know if you watched the first video, if you enjoyed it, and what your thoughts are about what we're going to share today.
Okay. I think the housekeeping is done. We've already asked you to like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the good things, show us some love as we are new to this whole YouTubing thing and we're new to building a channel. So show us some love and help us to get the word out there. Now we're going to get into our topic for today, which is how to connect with your higher self and your inner child for more acceptance and joy.
Yeah.
We're talking about how important it is for you to have that connection with your higher self and your inner child.
We know that this topic may be a little sensitive for some people because we all have different experiences. We are sharing from our own personal experiences. And so we want you to invite your soul sisters who may be interested. Stay tuned to hear what you can learn. And as we said already, make sure also pop something in the comments that we can learn from you as well.
Okay. We consider these conversations very sacred and very necessary. So it is important for us to be respectful and considerate of each other's contributions, whether we agree with them or whether we may have a different opinion. That's super important to us. And we want to welcome you into a very safe space where you can openly share your thoughts and ideas about some of the topics that we are a lot of times in our communities, not afraid, but they're not as often talked about, or in some instances, they may be considered taboo to go outside of those traditions and the things that are normal.
Or considered normal, depending on where you're from.
Yes. And a lot of us grew up in very religious households. We come from religious backgrounds. When we think about the higher self, or when we get into that conversation about the higher self, we're getting into that conversation about our God self. So we're going to get into that right now as we talk about the higher self, as we dive into a little bit about the inner child. And for me, our higher self is that part of you, or that part of me. I'll speak for myself, my perspective. My higher self is that part of me that is connected to source, that is connected to the divine spirit, to the alpha and the omega, to whatever resonates with you from a standpoint of knowing that you are a spiritual being having a human experience, or you are a human being with a spirit, whichever way you want to yin or yang that, right? So ultimately, many of us do believe that we, outside of our physical bodies, we have a spirit, or, sometimes we interchange soul and spirit. But essentially, we believe that outside of our physical body, there is a part of us that connects us to the divine. And maybe, Rhonda may have a different perspective about it, but I would call myself the part of me that is connected to the I am, to everything, to the all.
And that's actually the same way that I would describe it. Really, everything that Aisha said, I pretty much agree with, and consider my higher self to be that connection to the all. There really is no separation as far as I'm concerned. I am representative of, what we consider as God. I am God incarnate. I am the Most High incarnate, and God resides within me. And so my higher self, the way that I use it, is another term for that representation, that representative, omnipotent spirit, universal energy that many of us acknowledge and recognize.
Yes. And now getting into the inner child and who that inner child is. For many of us as adults, we have already gone through many of those rites of passage, from being born as an infant into being a toddler into young adulthood, and really wherever you presently are now in your adult life. From we came to this planet, we came with our inner child, who I like to consider the soul of who we are. Our soul is the unique representation of our inner self. So when you look at the macro, we're all a part of the all, and we're all connected to source. And then when you look at the micro, I'm showing up as Aisha, you're showing up as Rhonda, and you are showing up as your own unique person in your own unique way. Our inner child is that unique fractal of spirit that represents our innocence, our love, our curiosity, our intelligence. A lot of us disregard how intelligent our inner child is and how intelligent our children are. Our children, when they come in as that child, as that childlike version of self, and we've all gone through that process. So when I think of my inner child and who she is that version of me that is love abound. She is that version of me that's full of so much joy, that's full of so much curiosity, that's full of so much adventure and excitement and just joy.
Yeah, I like to say, and again, my understanding based on research and my own experience is that our inner child is the who of who we are before we've had experiences that almost, I want to use the word loosely, but damaged the essence of our childlike beauty, being, wonder, imagination, joy, freedom, just uninhibited way of being in the world without being concerned about what people think about us, etc., etc. That is as a result of experiences that we have in our childhood and later on. However, in a nutshell, the inner child for me is that part of who I am before I would have experienced trauma or triggers or, trials and tribulations, the things that cause emotional upheavals, right? So it's the real part of who I am meant to be. That's who the inner child is for me.
Yes. So definitely the inner child for all of us is that pure essence
Absolutely.
of who we are.
Yes.
And that part of us that is also very much connected to source. Because like you said, there is no separation. There may be different aspects, but it's still one in the all.
Right. And again, from a tangible perspective, when a baby is born, we all look at that new life with such awe and such innocence. And really, that is how we come into this world. And it's the external experiences that may shift that, but that is the representation of our inner child.
That newborn baby.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes. When we talk about the inner child and we talk about the higher self, you may be asking or thinking like, why do I need to connect? Or, am I connecting to two different aspects of myself, or am I connecting to the same thing? Or maybe you may be asking, well, why do I even need to connect? Why can't I just be? And I want to preface by also saying that, when we use the word connection, we're not saying that you are separate from, or this is something like external to you, or something that you like. It's not a physical connection or disconnection. So we want to make sure that we're clear on that. What we're really saying is that connecting to your higher self and as well as connecting to your inner child is almost like a process of remembrance, right?
Absolutely. And deepening your understanding of who you are, your inner child, knowing who your inner child is, getting to know your inner child, developing a relationship with that aspect of who you are, remembering that aspect of who you are, and kind of almost unifying who you are in your purest sense with your present self. That's when we talk about connecting. Again, as Aisha said, it's not a physical separation. It's strengthening the recognition of, the
Right.
understanding of, so that you are literally able to see, to speak to, and to relate to those aspects of who you are, which are there, whether we realize it or not.
Yes.
They are present. And so it's just a matter of the awareness of it.
And creating the relationship.
And creating
because
the
that's what the connection is actually having that relationship with self and having that relationship with God.
Absolutely. And your higher self is, like I like to say, your inner God self, right?
Yes.
And so your higher self is just ensuring that you are listening to, you're talking to, you're acknowledging that presence, right? Which is never outside of you. It's always within, as we are connected to all.
Yes. And so let's start with why it's important for us to have this relationship and why it's important for us to connect with our inner child. I think everyone watching this video can probably relate with the inner child more because we've all had to journey through childhood to get to where we are right now. And we've all had those experiences where we were just sort of like ecstatic about life as a child, just very, very curious, very, very hopeful. And I know me, I was just in awe of almost everything as a child. Like the littlest things I found so fascinating. To this day, I'm still fascinated by little ladybugs. You don't see them a lot lately, right?
I don't see them as
but
much.
Oh my gosh, seeing a ladybug was like the biggest thing as a child. I think we all can relate to those moments of just magic. I always go back to the magic because I feel like those are the magical moments.
And really being able to sink into and enjoy present moment and experience of whatever it is. Like as we're sitting here talking, as Aisha was explaining that, my mind went back to this recurring memory that I have. It's almost like the first vivid memory I have of myself as a child in Freeport. I was born in Freeport. We moved here when I was 5, but it was, I don't know. I really don't know how old I was. Let's just say 3 or 4, thereabouts, I'm thinking. But at our house in Freeport, and I'm in the backyard. And you know, when you're younger, it's like everything is so huge. When you go back in your, when you think about these things, it's like, it seems as if it was so huge.
Yes.
And in reality, it wasn't. But it feels so expansive. And so the memory, I just see myself running around in the yard, just playing. We had a little sausage hot dog, they called it, right? Mm-hmm. A little hot dog, and just free abandon. No care in the world, just playing in the back and running in this big old yard. It wasn't that big, mind you, but that's how it felt. That's the memory that we this big old yard on a slope going from near the house all the way to the back of the swings. And I mean, just total abandon.
Yeah.
Just loving it and sinking into that moment.
And that is bringing me to, well, I wasn't born in Grand Bahama, but my dad is from Grand Bahama and my grandmother's in Grand Bahama. I spent all my summers, winters, everything there. And so you talking about that memory brings a memory up for me as a little girl in Grand Bahama. My grandmother, her in the back of her yard, she had like a mini farm. Like she used to do backyard farming. Mm-hmm. And I would remember going in the back there and like feeling like a jungle.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like a jungle and you're just getting lost in like the banana trees and trying to climb the banana trees and you had the ganab trees and the mango trees and there were so many trees and it just was like when you walked in the back there, it was almost like you were in a different world.
Yeah.
So like I get it 100%. The experience of it is just so amazing and it's like as we journey into adulthood, we lose that. We lose that spark.
That wonder.
Yes.
You know? I'm telling you.
And we had no fear. As children, we just want to explore. We're not worried about what may happen and what may not happen and all that good stuff. We're just like, someone says, let's go. And we're like, where are we going? You know?
Yeah. Just enthralled and totally immersed in what is happening, not being concerned. And that's what the childlike experience is. So we definitely want to be able to be like our childlike self, not childish, childlike. And that simply means that, like the memories that we just shared, being totally, free and with total carefree abandon to be able to be in the present moment, not concerned about the future, no anxiety about that, or anticipation about that, no worry about the past, just being immersed and fully present in the moment. And there's something so special and beautiful about that. Because if you think about it, Aisha, we spend so much of our adult time, oh my gosh, I got to go do this tomorrow. And next month, where I can find this money. And then regretting or, some issue with regards to what happened in the past that you can't even change. And that contributes to us missing in the moment. So returning to that childlike ability to not even be concerned one way or the other, behind or in front of us or behind. with the present moment is a beautiful thing.
Definitely. And the irony in that is for me, I didn't realize how disconnected I was from my inner child because well into my 30s, and there were parts of me that were still aligned with my inner child in some way. Yeah, because I've always loved like dancing and I've always loved to have fun. I've always loved humor and laughter. And I think that's the one thing like my inner child has been literally hanging on to for their life. She's like, I need to stay alive somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, laughter's been that for me, but I didn't realize how disconnected I was until it was brought to my awareness. And like Rhonda said, we are sharing our lived experiences and our own personal discoveries on our own evolution journey here with you.
And we want to hear yours too, right?
Absolutely.
Put
We
the comments.
definitely want to hear from you as well. So for me, coming into this awareness, it really opened my eyes in terms of how disconnected I was. I was like, wait a minute, I totally forgot about my inner child. And I don't know if this is something that you guys can relate to, but there had been years and years where, especially as a single mom, as someone who is building business, as someone who, has dreams, aspirations, and, outside of all of that, we have this constant need to make sure that we can provide a roof over our head and put food on the table and all these things. And so in the midst of all of that, you forget that there is an inner child in there. Like you forget there's a part of you that once just enjoyed being present in the moment, that didn't want to think about what had to happen next week or next month. There's this part of you that enjoys. Well, I must admit, I do still love going outside and being out in nature and those types of things. But again, there were so many aspects of myself that I had just forgotten about. Things like painting. Now sipping paints is a thing. Again, thankful for these things that come up, whether they're trendy or not, where it allows us to remember. Because that's what we're doing. We're remembering like, oh my gosh, I forgot how much I love to paint. I forgot how much I love to color. I forgot how much I enjoy singing. I forgot how much I enjoy dancing. And whatever it is that may bring you joy. For some people, it may be in the garden planting flowers. And for other people, it may be cooking. And so, so it's a ton of things that lights up our inner child. For me, I was like, wow, I totally forgot about her.
Well, you saying that you forgot. I didn't even know about her. I mean, just keeping it real.
Yeah.
And what do I mean by that? So, and what we're describing, I'm sure many of our viewers have experienced, but putting it in that terminology, it's fairly new. And when I say new, within the last maybe 4 years, for me, consciously becoming aware of this aspect of who I am, who I've always been, connecting and reconnecting with her, and then recognizing how far away I moved from her, burying certain things in my memory. And it wasn't until in recent years when I went through some stuff, which I'll share at some point, but, I call it my breakdown that led to my breakthrough, that as a part of me coming out of that, then being led to connect with my inner child. You know what I'm saying? And realizing, like you said, there's so many things about her that I had forgotten, didn't know, had buried, that I had to remember. Yeah. So for some of you, you may be very familiar with the term. This may not be new to you, but for others of you, like me, it may be something that you didn't even have an awareness of. And so, it's
like us, because not to not have the awareness, but not even considering it, not even thinking like, okay, this is something that I should be aware of.
Right. That's like, not having the awareness that your inner child is a thing, like that exists. Many of us don't even realize that.
Right.
And so becoming aware of that, and then consciously, as we are saying, making a connection with her, getting to know her,
building that relationship,
is a beautiful process.
Absolutely.
This is why, right, Aisha, we're having this conversation about the inner child, our higher self, and the why it is important, because we want people to be aware.
Yes.
Right? And to actively and intentionally take these steps, as is our suggestion, to get to know and to remember,
Yeah. We're talking about the inner child right now, and we're definitely going to get into the higher self. But one of the things, and I guess this can go both ways, inner child and higher self, why having that connection and that relationship is important, because one, it really turns the mirror inward, and it it fosters self-awareness. So self-awareness as well as self-accountability. For most of us, we've grown up, some of us have been fortunate to be in environments that are not this way, but for many of us, we have grown up in environments where we've just been taught to externalize everything. We've been taught to point fingers at other people or other places or other things. We've been taught to believe the grass is greener on the other side, and all of the things that take us away from what really, really matters, which is the work that we do within ourselves. In this building of the relationship, connecting and remembering, you're now in a position where you can start to be self-aware about many things, as well as you can start to hold yourself accountable for how you've been showing up for yourself. Are we abandoning ourselves? For me, because I had totally forgotten about my inner child, in a lot of ways, she felt abandoned. And the irony in that is the fact that as a child myself, I felt abandoned. So here I am now sort of perpetuating cycles of abandonment from the same exact things that, I didn't enjoy or didn't like or didn't feel good about as a child. As an adult, here doing the same thing. And that happens a lot. And these are things that we learn as we start that process of connecting and of healing our inner child. Part of the healing work allows us to then look at, some of the emotional baggage that our inner child may have. And it also allows us to heal that and again, build that relationship that takes us back to the source of who our inner child is and essentially who we are.
When we are able to kind of weave that relationship with our inner child again, it allows us, as was said earlier, to be accountable, which also then allows us to show up differently in other relationships, right? When we tend to look inward before we point outward, it helps us to be more honest, right? More authentic and more patient with others in our relationships. So that's definitely one of the reasons for me that I think it's important to strengthen that or to reconnect with your inner child. And of course, in doing that, could you imagine if we all become so aware and so connected with our inner child, which helps us to show up differently, how that can have a reverberating effect on our community, on humanity, when we're all being self-accountable, aware and accountable for our actions and what we do and say, et cetera, et cetera. We can just imagine the ripple effect that can have.
Definitely. Why it's important for us to make this connection is because a lot of times when we are not connected with our inner self, we tend to play small and ultimately we tend to give our power away. We tend to we don't know what our power is because we have, again, not made those connections. We don't have that self-awareness. We don't have that self-acceptance. The whole reason why we're talking about making these connections is so that we can have more acceptance and joy. And we're going to talk about why that is important as well. But not having this relationship and not having this connection usually means that in some way, shape, or form, you're giving away your power. You're allowing someone else to maybe define who you are, define your worth. You're probably allowing someone else to, dictate how you show up, how you live in your life. Sometimes we end up in relationships when we don't own our power, where we can be manipulated, where we can be taken advantage of more in one way or the other, right? And it's not a matter of blaming someone else. We're just saying these are some of the things that can happen when we don't have that relationship with both our inner child and our higher self, because these connections are what allows us to tap into the truth of who we are, as well as that allow us to begin to move and operate, like Rhonda was just saying, from a space of love and authority and sovereignty. As a sovereign being, there's a wholeness, there's an encompassing wholeness that we, in many cases, we are totally oblivious to because these are not the conversations that we're having, especially not as adults.
Yeah. And when you go back into your inner child and you remember her at the point of purity and joy, and then you begin to remember other things that impacted that, you begin potentially, it's different for everybody, but I know for me, you begin to think of things that may have been said, again, these thoughts that were really planted in your mind that you have accepted as your own, but really aren't your own. They were, they were placed on you, but you have moved into adulthood believing that that's your truth. And so when we're able to reconnect with who she really is, and speaking from a female perspective, or who he really is, if you're a male out there watching, then you're able to kind of wade through all of that and go back to the essence, the truth and purity of who you were before all of that really began. And when you're able to do that and accept those things, then you're able to kind of filter them out to be able to really see who you really are meant to be, and the powerhouse that you are and the power that you have as a result,
Yeah. With building this relationship and having this connection, it allows you to coexist with people. Talk about your steps being divinely guided, your steps being guided by God. I always talk about the fact that, for me, it's not just my inner child and my higher self. I have divine guides. I have spirit guides. I have ancestors. Reconnecting with our higher self and having this connection and this relationship with our inner child. It also raises our own vibrationary frequencies. And it also, from a collective standpoint, raises the consciousness and the vibration of the entire planet. One of the things that I've learned through my own journey of healing and studying so that I could understand the dynamics and the expansiveness of who I am as a human being, because we are giving away so much of our power because we don't know what it is, right? Just in learning some of that, one of the things that I learned is just how impactful even a conversation like this is on the consciousness of the entire planet. The more of us that are setting this intention and being deliberate about wanting to have that active relationship where we are co-creating and coexisting with the higher self, with our inner child, where, they are a part of the decision-making processes that we're doing on a daily basis. We are moving with that divine guidance. We are living in societies or in communities where people can look at us and they can see. A lot of times too, we don't know what we don't see. And so we don't know any of this is possible, even for us. Like until these things came into our awareness, we didn't even know it was a thing. For us, being intentional about making these connections and building these relationships allows us then to be a light for somebody else, to raise the planetary consciousness, as well as to, on a more micro level, to just be able to raise the vibration in our own communities, or in our own workplaces, or in the schools that we attend, or in the people that we come in contact with. And it makes a difference.
Yeah. And really, I think it's important what you said in regards to, we're talking kind of about both, but when we talk about the higher self, when we are able to lead with that, with the understanding that we are in alignment with something greater, right? Mm-hmm. It definitely allows us to, one, we realize that we're not alone. And two, it helps us to tap into, it's kind of challenging in some cases to explain, but we rely on the conscious mind or the human mind to make decisions, as opposed to when are we hearing the voice of our higher self? Which one is it that's guiding us? And which one is it that we should tap into, or ideally tap into, so that we are really being guided in a way that will best serve us? Because our mind is take us on a roller coaster and all kinds of things, and lead us down, all different manner of things, right? And directions. But when we are in tune with and connected to our God self, our higher self that is speaking to us, it definitely makes a difference in the decisions we make and how we move.
Yes.
And as Aisha said, the more of us that do that, certainly the better for the planet, for humanity, and how we interact, how we
for our future children,
for our lineage. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes. And actually, speaking to future children, another reason why building this connection is, there's so many reasons why, really. We could go on all day, right? But just at that point, as far as our children, because now we've already gone through that childhood journey and we're both moms. But speaking to that point, having these connections helps us to do that inner healing work, and break those cycles of generational trauma, of woundedness, of all the dysfunction that comes with, some of our lineage that's been passed down from generation to generation to generation. And we know that, especially in the African, whether it's the diaspora, right? Whether you're in America, Caribbean, wherever you may be, we know that there's a lot of baggage that comes with our lineage, but we can start to do some of that healing work to allow us to not continue to perpetuate the same cycles generation after generation after generation, and having that connection and that relationship allows you to just shift perspective about so many things, because for a lot of us, we believe that things have happened to us, to our ancestors, to, our great grandmothers or our great grandfathers. And we can't see where there could be any good that could have come out of some of the things that we've had to go through. There have been some atrocities, you know what I'm saying? We can't run away from that. But again, we have the power to transmute that. We have the power to shift that. If you look at it from a macro coming down, every time it comes down into the micro, it shows up in a different way in different families, right? And so with the tools that we have accessible to us, just based on, if you look at the educational systems that we're part of, they don't teach us. They don't teach us this stuff. They don't teach us how to heal the inner child. They don't even mention the inner child. And then you go into the churches, which most of us are a part of as we grow up as kids and as adults. Some of us we're in these different organizations for spiritual growth, and we're not necessarily provided with all these tools. The tools that you're going to have to get access to are going to come straight from source. Because once you build that relationship, you ask for what you need.
Ask and you shall receive. Yes.
Because you may need something completely different from what I need anyway. And so when we have that relationship, we can go and say, well, you know what? This is what is on my heart today. This is what I need assistance with, because we don't have the tools to work through it ourselves. So guide me, ask for that guidance, ask for that assistance, ask for that demonstration. That's another thing that I've been coming to learn, is that we literally just have to ask, because the divine wants to be there to support us.
I'm just thinking, and I'm smiling. Two things. One, I think, and based on traditional religion, which I have no issue with. I grew up in a Methodist church, right? However, modern religions, today's religion, and the way that we practice religion is everything takes us outside of us.
Yes.
Everything takes us outside of us, which, if we understand that the outside that we are being taken to is really here within, it's inside of us, which is where the power lies, which is where the work is best done to remain connected, then we then can really connect to and understand the power that we have.
And we won't be seeking that external validation.
Yes.
Which is what we end up doing.
Right.
When we don't know what's inside of us, we're always looking for someone else to tell us.
Yes. And that's the importance of recognizing that your higher self there is no separation. When we wear that hat, as they say, wear that crown, tilt it to whatever direction you need to remind you and connect you to your power, right? It really empowers you to be reminded of how you can show up in the world.
We've shared some reasons why this reconnection or remembrance or relationship, so many words that we can use, but why this is so important. We've shared that. And so now we're going to get into how you can make those connections to allow more acceptance and more joy to enter into your life.
Yeah. Let's get into the how. But if I may, before we continue, there's another why that I want us to reiterate. If we said it before, no problem, because it's worth repeating. Okay. But definitely, Aisha, we want our viewers to know that one of the key reasons, and it's a part of why, no pun intended, yes, pun intended, why we're doing this is because we want to reconnect with the play, the fun. We often think about playing as a childish thing, only children play, but no, as adults, we lose that, that essence of just being free, right? And being okay with unscheduled, unplanned, just free time to just be. And play. And play can come in so many different forms for all of us. The reconnection to those things that you enjoy doing as a child, engage in them now as a form of play, or pick up something new. Whatever it is that would work for you. We want to encourage our viewers and remind ourselves, as we do offline all the time, to engage in play. Just enjoyment.
Yes, I was just going to say that. Enjoyment. Figuring out what brings you joy. And what brought you joy 5 years ago may not be the same thing that brings you joy today. So, just be open and be free to even have new experiences. Or if you can't think of what brings you joy, to be willing to go and say, well, let me try something new. There was a thing that I used to do in my 20s. And this is one of the things I think I want to bring back in my 40s. It's like every month doing something that I've never done before. I don't know if you've done that or if you've heard about that.
I have. I've heard about it. I haven't done it. Yes. Definitely heard about it. Yeah.
In my 20s, that was like a real thing. I would always constantly be doing something that I had never done before. And having these new experiences, because sometimes we don't even know what we enjoy because we're so limited. Our existing experiences may have been so limited. So if that is the case, like Rhonda said, allowing play to be that reason you go out there and explore and be curious and spark that inner joy.
Yeah, make it an important part of your life, because that definitely, as we now segue back to the how,
Yes.
Is how you can reconnect with your inner child.
Yes, I guess we can use that as one of the initial ways you can build that connection and build that relationship is through play.
Absolutely.
Finding those things that are going to bring the enjoyment back into your life. And it doesn't always have to be anything extravagant and fussy. One of the things that I have been doing recently with myself, as well as sometimes my daughter chimes in, I would literally be in the kitchen and I would just be singing. I'd wake up in the morning and go outside and just start singing to the birds and the butterflies. And I'd start singing songs to hype myself up and to get a mood going. The other day, me and Iowa, we were in the kitchen and she wanted me to do something and I sang to her. And so she sang back to me and it became a whole thing where we literally sang the whole time we were in the kitchen. And that in the moment brought me joy. That was play for me. You don't always have to go out there looking for things. Of course, if you have things that you'd like to do outside and if you could afford to pay for these experiences, great, but it can be simple things.
Yeah, I'll give you an example as simple as, so as a child, I remember my mom talks about it all the time. I was a huge busybody, very, 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 very active. I loved climbing trees. So I'm not climbing trees these days, but there is a tree in my yard that I just love to go and sit in. Like it's shaped where it's almost like a beautiful seat. So yes. So I go out there. It's a hog plum tree, actually, which makes it even more, beautiful, the experience. So I just go and I sit in there and I lay back and I relax and I love it. It's relaxing. It's outside. I like to say in the belly of nature, right? In the belly of the beauty of what nature gives us. And I find enjoyment in the moments that I'm spending out there, just spending time with me and my higher self.
Yes. And your inner child.
And my inner child. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's definitely one of the things that we can do to build that connection. And another thing that we can do to build that connection and build that relationship, one of the things as I started my journey that was challenging for me was to even remember what my inner child looks like or what I looked like as a child, right? I could not remember the different faces that I've had before this one. I couldn't remember those faces. And so one of the things that I had come across as a way of connecting and remembering is finding old photos of myself. And that in itself for me is now play, because now I'm on this hunt for people because I don't really have that many photos. So I am now looking out, calling my aunts up and being like, hey, I want to come over. I want to look through some old albums just to see if I could come across photos of myself as a child. And so that I could start to remember her. And in doing that, once you have these photos, you want to place them places where you can see her and incorporate her. And I'm saying her because obviously my inner child is her, but your inner child, you may be a guy and your inner child may be a he. He, it, she, her, however you decide to refer to your inner child. The whole idea here is to find those photos or items that remind you of what you enjoyed as a child or places you may have been. I know many of us have been to Disney World. Disney World was like every summer thing. It was to the point where by the time I became a mom and I had my first child, the last time I was to Disney World was with my first child, who's now 20 something years old. So that should tell you that's how much Disney World was my family, not just my mom, but my family in general, they were obsessed. Disney is still around. Barbie is still around. There are a lot of things from our childhood that's still around. So you want to find those things that are going to remind you of the joy that you experienced as a child, as well as if you can find photos that actually remind you of yourself as a child, different stages of your life. And keep those around you to bring that spirit and that energy into your space so that it becomes a part of your everyday life. It's not something that you look at every so often, but it literally is an everyday part of you.
And when you talk about the photos, the connection or developing that relationship with your inner child, the truth is you may look at those pictures and there may have been a point when you looked at those pictures and not saw the beauty in who she was. And I'm saying that because that was me when I remember looking at pictures of myself and thinking, you wasn't cute. But of course, as I've gone through my healing journey, I look at those pictures now and I say to her, you are beautiful.
Yes.
You are beautiful. You were and you are beautiful, and so,
Absolutely.
yeah, so bringing those pictures back to reaffirm her and to tell her that you love her as a part of that process is so important. And no, it's not crazy. No, it's not selfish to pick up yourself. It's a part of the self-love that we all too often don't engage in,
So another way we can make that connection with your inner child, these are interchangeable. So you can do this with your inner child as well as with your higher self. If you are looking to connect and build that relationship with your inner child, the way we build relationships is usually through communication. So one of the things we would be inclined to do is to talk to your higher self as well as talk to your inner child. Speaking to your inner child, a lot of people think that you have to, well, this probably more so goes for the higher self because a lot of people think that you have to come and because of the programming that we have around God and the diplomacy. And of course, there's a level of reverence and so forth, but people think that they have to show up in a certain way when really and truly you only have to show up as yourself because your higher self, as well as your inner child are you. They are aspects of you. You don't have to be anything but your authentic self. If you feel mad and you want to show up and have conversations when you're frustrated about something, that's okay. If you're sad about something and you want to have conversations, that's okay. You can ask your inner child, what are you sad about? What makes you feel unloved, or what makes you feel unworthy, or what makes you feel abandoned? Because a lot of us have abandoned our inner child. A lot of us have abandoned ourselves. You can ask those questions. You can ask your higher self, what is it that I need to do to be able to have that relationship with my own self that allows me to fully acknowledge the love that I am and the power that I have and the wisdom and the intelligence that I possess. What are some of the ways that I can start to foster that within myself? So having those conversations with our higher self, having those conversations with our inner child helps to build a relationship because we already know that no relationship, is going to be a sustainable or strong or even effective relationship if you don't have that open communication and honest communication, because a lot of times too, when you start to build this relationship and build these connections, going back to the self accountability, it's going to force us to start to look at the ways that we have been our own worst enemy, essentially.
Yeah, these conversations are so critical because that is when we can really begin to get to know ourselves better, recognize and acknowledge certain things about ourselves. That's a part of the self-awareness, the self-accountability process, I believe. The more that we have these conversations, and the conversation can come and we know growing up as children, if you're in the church, it's come as you are. There's no pretty package that has to show up or again in a particular way. Come as you are. And so the conversations can happen in the car, on the way to work, in the shower, in the kitchen while you're cooking, and the conversations can happen out loud. The conversations can happen as a prayer. One of my mentors, she's be talking to the Most High, to God, as is her reference, her inner God self. All day. Now listen, you tell me I need to do this. So let's go now. Come on, don't make me shame.
Many of us do also have these conversations with our inner child, higher self. We're just unaware.
Yes.
That's what we're doing.
Right.
We're just unaware. And of course, just as we have a higher self, we do also have a lower self. Some of us have a stronger relationship with our lower self than we do with our higher self. That's why now, as we talk about having this connection with our higher self, building this relationship with our higher self, and how it shifts our lives, allowing us to have more acceptance and more joy. Some of us currently have a stronger relationship with our lower self because we haven't started to look at some of the things that we talked about in terms of why it's so important to have these relationships and how it frees us and how it allows us to shift from self-judgment and self-hate to self-love and self-acceptance. In making that shift, in doing some of the practices here, as well as some of the other practices that we will talk about in other videos, as well as that we will reference, and using some of the tools that are available, you're able to then start to build that relationship with your higher self as opposed to our lower self. Because again, like Rhonda was saying, in terms of the conversation, a lot of us have these conversations now, but they're not conversations that are serving our evolution. And so we want to make that shift into conversing with our higher self, conversing with our inner child, the aspects of us that want to see us grow, evolve, and thrive, essentially.
And that affirms who we are, and the conversations that we're having, the questions that we're asking, that takes us to the next thing. I like to say that prayer is like you're asking God, or you're asking the Most High, you're asking your higher self for confirmation, affirmation, direction, protection, help, all those things. And then the next how for me is, as you move in then to meditation, which can also take the form of, in different ways, you can then listen for the answer. That's a beautiful way. I actually heard Queen Afua describe it that way once, and I really adopted that because it was so beautifully applicable for me. And so meditation is another way, another how in regards to connecting with your inner self, with your most high, with your higher self, because you're in that meditation space. Which meditation doesn't have to necessarily be the traditional meditation where you're just sitting, not moving. There are moving meditations. There's all different ways to meditate. And people often say that they find it difficult to do. But even if it's deep breathing, whatever that looks like for you. I remember Aisha used to do a mindful moment or a meditation moment, a series.
Rise and Align.
Rise and Align. And she said, well, you may not know what meditation is, but you know how to breathe, right? So just focus on the breath. You know, let's just remove the heaviness of what we think meditation is.
Correct.
And so just focus on the breath and just quiet your spirit.
Yes.
And in doing that, it allows you to hear, right? To tap in and to hear the divine voice that is there to guide you.
Yep. Yeah. So another way to build that connection, build that relationship is co-creating with, coexisting with. And I think we may have said it another way a bit earlier, but in co-creating, it simply means that you are now not necessarily always going off of your own will, but off of thy will. And really it's shifting how you show up. And so you have this awareness now, you understand the importance now. And so now you are putting into action or making a daily habit or daily practice of incorporating your higher self and your inner child into your daily life. And things like if you're going to make a decision, or sometimes we're at crossroads in our lives and we don't know which way to go, communicating and asking, for direction, asking for guidance, and asking for those daily sort of demonstrations of what your life will be like or is like when you show up in your alignment with your higher self and your inner child. And so asking your higher self or asking your inner child, and I'll give this as an example of how this could be applicable. There's sometimes when we make plans as adults to do things with people or sometimes even ourselves, and we'll be all into that, ready, date set, calendar set, and then the day comes and you may, for some reason, feel like, you know what? I don't know if I really want to go. I don't know if I really want to go. And so the old version of me would be like, maybe I'm just, the whole idea of getting dressed to go places is enough to make me second guess when I want to do something. The old version of me will disregard the fact that there is an inner child in me that may just not want to go out to play, that may just not want to be around other people. The new version of me, as I am making plans to do things, I'm asking my inner child, how do you feel about us doing this today? It seems weird. It may seem like, girl, what are you even talking about? Why would you ask your inner child for, in essence, for permission to do X, Y, and Z, or how they feel about X, Y, and Z? Because our mindset is that children do not have the intelligence to make decisions. I know I grew up in a house where my grandmother said children are to be seen and not heard. So a lot of us don't even give our children a voice, right? But that is a part of building that relationship. When you speak to your inner child, you give your inner child that space to also communicate with you. And you may also be wondering, like, well, how will I even hear her? It is not present. They are present. They are a part of you. As long as you're willing to hear, they will speak.
And a part of the how is recognizing that there is a practice Because we've been, in many cases, not all, but in many cases so far removed from the inner childness of who we are, it takes practice to reconnect. Coming to the point where you're able to differentiate, as I said earlier, between, just the conscious mind, the carnal mind, if you will, versus the voice of the inner child or your higher self may take practice to be able to hear. And so whether it may not happen overnight. Matter of fact, it probably won't happen overnight. It takes time because you didn't get to where you are overnight. So it's going to take time to peel back the layers and to, go back into those things that may have taken you away from the innocence of who you were and the childlike wonder that we had at one point. But just to encourage you to practice, practice becoming who you desire to be in the present with the guidance and experiences that your inner child had, as you also help her to let go of some of what you may not need in this present time and to bring back those things that will help to continue to propel you further.
Yes. Another question that you may have is, how do you know? Because I think that's kind of what you're getting at in terms of distinguishing if you are conversing and communicating with your inner child or your higher self. And the simple answer to identifying who you're communicating with in that sense is simple. It literally boils down to if you are being uplifted, loved, supported, guided. Any other words you want to add to that?
No, those are some good words.
If it's anything that's coming from love, anything outside of love, I can assure you it will not be your inner child. It will not be your higher self.
And you know what? I have found that when I walk in alignment with the divine guidance that comes, I'm in a better space. It ends up working out in the way that serves me best. That the choice is now almost always to walk in alignment with the divine guidance as opposed to with what the ego may be pulling me toward. So that's the difference for me.
And even with the ego, though, people give the ego a very bad rap.
It's necessary. It's necessary.
Yes, the ego is
it's protection as well in many cases.
The ego is absolutely necessary. The ego is our internal validation tool. The ego is there to validate whatever you say is true to be true. So we're going to reel it back. We're going to reel it back to how we can make these connections so that we can create more acceptance. We can shift into now talking about how some of these practices, there are so many more that we're going to talk about over time because we can't fit everything into one video. But we're going to talk now about how some of these practices allows for more acceptance and more joy. And I guess I would just say, going back to the fact that once you are building that relationship with your higher self and with your inner child, and you are learning to, trust yourself, and you're learning to love yourself, because fundamentally that is the primary thing when we talk about connecting with our higher self, connecting with our inner child. God is love, and every aspect of God is nothing but love. And so the more we make that connection, the more we shift our perspective from a place of love. For me, I am redefining love every day, because again, we have our definitions of love and even our experiences of love typically come with conditions. It's all these conditions to what we call love, right? And this process is you relearning what love truly is. There is no if and or with love. Love is acceptance. Love is accepting that all that is necessary and beautiful. God makes no mistakes.
Unconditional.
God makes no mistake. All of the things that exist in this world, some of them as difficult to accept as they may be, as painful as some of them may be in terms of our perspective, what we've been conditioned to think, they're all beautiful and necessary. When you understand that, and when you even understand the cycle of life and the birth and the death and the rebirth and the death and the rebirth, and the fact that is all a cycle of life, and there is nothing bad about it, because our perspectives are based on what we've been taught and how we look at death. And we look at it as, in some instances, as losing somebody, when in fact we don't ever lose anyone. Everyone is always there. All of our loved ones from every lifetime is always there with us. But we don't remember. We don't remember and we don't connect. We don't have those relationships. Even when you look at from an African traditional perspective, the way they venerate their ancestors, and that is a part of remembering. That is a part of maintaining that relationship in the afterlife, so to speak. But that's not something that we're taught. In fact, that is something that's very much demonized.
I was just thinking as you were talking, and I want us to elaborate a bit more on that. When we say that everything is beautiful, which is a concept that I had challenges verbalizing or applying to everything. And so I moved past that, but I'm coming back to it as you're talking because I want us to get into that a bit more in regards to when we say that everything is beautiful. Are we really saying everything is beautiful? Or it may not feel beautiful. However, there is a beautiful reason why it needed to happen. Like, is there a difference in the actual thing and how we perceive that thing in shifting it to where we're not seeing it as something horrendous or horrible, or you know what I'm saying?
Right. So I think I understand the question. From my perspective, I just see it all as just being beautiful. And it's very touche in the sense that the way we have been taught to relate with these different experiences have been based on this is good, this is bad.
Right.
When you move from love, when you understand that all is, there is no good and bad.
I agree.
From the physical matter experience, because we're talking now about, for a lot of us who have gone through some things that would be considered horrific and horrendous, we're talking about now basically saying that those things are beautiful. And so the experience itself, you may not consider beautiful, but how did this experience serve you? Right?
You're saying exactly, yeah.
I'm just saying that because, again, there are levels to how you may want to process it. There is no right and wrong way.
I agree.
That if that is the way you process it, like this was not the best experience. This is not the most enjoyable experience, but I took something beautiful away from that.
Yes.
How did this serve me? Because everything is happening for us.
Yes.
Right? What is the beauty in that? For example, I will share 2009 was the hardest year to date of my life. The year was a very, very rough year. Two of my kids lost their fathers. And that was October of 2009, where I honestly, I mean, that was like, I was, in fact, but I'm going to get to that. Let me not skip. I love the jump story. October 2009, when my daughter's father passed, and I was broken into pieces. My based on my comprehension at that time, where I was in my life at that time, I can't even put words to it now because I've moved through it. But I just thought that my life was, I wouldn't say I thought my life was going to end, but I knew that my life was definitely not going to be the same. And I was very broken. I was very, I'll put it this way. The first 2 years after he passed, I feel like I was just in a trance, right? Because I was going through that mourning period. I was just processing everything that didn't happen. Everything was happening so fast. Of course, after he passed, and I'm not going to get into all the specific details right now, but there was a series of events that was happening. Needless to say, at that time, I was very angry because my daughter at the time was 4 years old, and, my son had just lost his father. And I was like, why is this happening to me? Why am I?
Which is usually our first question.
Correct.
Yeah, our first response. Yeah.
And I just was like, this is my partner. This is someone who supports me. I was able to have the job that I had because he was there to help me with my daughter. He was my support system, and just like that, he was gone. I was like, what am I even going to do? How am I going to get through this? Right. But little did I know that his death would be the spark for me to begin to transform my entire life. That was 2009. And 2010 was when I first started to go on my self-discovery journey. First started to make those initial prompts into who am I? Why am I here? And understanding so much more that at the time, that in itself was, oh my gosh. We're gonna have to do a video just on what that process is like when you first go through that awakening and have to go through like all the shocks.
The unlearning.
Yes, right? I'm saying all that to say, when he transitioned, I thought that was the most painful. It was the most painful thing at that time ever. And really, I was angry because I was like, well, why? And now I'm here. I have to do this all alone, all this other stuff. I would have never been able to, at that time, see anything great or beautiful about that situation. It just wasn't going to happen. But today, every time I think about him, I say thank you. I say thank you because literally his life was what gave me my life. And of course, there are so many other examples of it, but every single piece of pain, everything that we ever go through, there is beauty and there is power in that.
So I'm asking the question, knowing the answer, but still wanting us to unpack it.
Yes.
Because I know for me, that was a huge leap. Like it took me a long while to be able to really understand the concept of beauty in the pain. Intellectually, you hear the sayings of find a silver lining in everything and all that kind of stuff. But just to give another example based on something that I observed, somebody in the community lost a child, an adult child in recent times. And I went to the store where her parents were. I hadn't seen them since she passed. And I was expressing my, condolences for their loss. And I was expecting the same, the usual kind of sadness that people have because this is her child. And I think it's her only child. I'm not sure. But you know what she said to me? She literally had a smile. And this had to have been a week after they buried her. Right. And she had a smile on her face. She said, I am good. She said, I had 30 plus beautiful years with her and I'm okay. And that hit me like a ton of bricks because it was one of the most profound reminders
Right.
for me of no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah.
No matter what. I are right. You know what I mean? So the point that you're making is a profound one. I don't want us to skip over it, and unpacking it is important because we have been programmed to see things so opposite to that.
Yes.
And to sink into the woe is me and the why me. And that's why I want to differentiate between the humanness of who we are and the God of who we are, because the humanness, that's the response. I like to say that the carnal mind, that's the response. Whereas again, that relationship with your inner self, your higher God self, I believe will help you to connect with or shift your perception of experiences that you have.
I would say more so the unevolved human, because even now it's still my human mind. It's just that now my mind has evolved. Like the thoughts that I can think now can be more evolved just because I'm tapped in to a higher way of thinking or a higher perception about the same exact things or the same exact experiences.
So as we kind of begin to wind down, Aisha, this has been, as was the other, a great conversation. We want to leave them with maybe two more. How can they connect with the inner child and their higher self? You want to lead us into the next one?
Well, definitely affirmations is a big one.
Sure.
It's a common thing that people talk about. And the power of affirmations is that what we say to be true about ourselves is ultimately what is true. Yes. And so affirming yourself is very, very important, especially as you are building these new relationships with your higher self, with your inner child. Affirming your inner child, affirming yourself. So simply put, affirmations or to affirm is to create statements about who you believe yourself to be. As you're affirming yourself, you're putting out into the universe, you're creating these new vibrations and these new frequencies around who you believe yourself to be. And that helps you to align with your higher self as well as with your inner child. And I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Rhonda, because, the power of affirmations is so profound. It's one of the simplest ways that you can build that relationship and build that connection.
Absolutely. Another way of saying that is there's power in the tongue, right?
Yes.
There's power in the tongue, and the repetition of these statements is also a rewiring of your mind,
yes.
A rewiring of your thoughts. And the more that you repeat it, the more that you believe it, the more that you accept it, then you can begin to embody it, right? And so affirmations are very powerful, but they're not just words that you want to repeat absently, without being present or without engendering a feeling behind them. You want to embody the feeling, however it makes you feel in that positive way. That's really what ultimately we want to create as we're repeating the statements. And that is what helps with manifesting what it is that we desire.
And connecting with our
connecting
inner
with our
child,
inner child,
and our
higher
higher
self.
self. Yes.
For greater acceptance and joy.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, another one of those ways, and this will probably be the final one for me, that I think is a great way to do that is to move, because movement helps you to break up, to release, to expel stagnant energy that may be sitting there in your spirit, stifling your inner child, stifling your connection with your higher self. Moving, which allows you to release that energy and stagnant energy or heavy energy or negative energy, right? To release that so that you're able to make room for pouring in of the joy and the laughter and the lightness. And so movement, of course, can be in whatever form works for you. My favorite, which I talk about always, is to dance.
Yes.
Yoga is another favorite of mine. So whatever type of movement, many people go into the gym and they pump it out, but whatever works for you, movement is a beautiful way to do that. Tapping is another one. When I did my yoga certification, we did an energy bath, which is, again, tapping in essence.
You also have like Qigong. Qigong is one of my favorites.
Yes.
Because you actually get to move your physical body, but you also get to move that energy as well. So I love Qigong. Tai Chi is another one as well. And also all of these hows are actually, they go into the healing modalities or the things that you can do as far as healing, because as we're building that relationship with our inner child, there's going to be some healing work that happens as well.
For sure.
We're going to actually be talking about that in our next video. So stay posted for that. Just side note. But agree with Rhonda. It's very important for us to move our bodies, especially as we get older. It's important for us to allow those meridians and the chakras and all of the systems and all of the plasma that runs through our body. We want it to be able to move freely and fluidly.
Absolutely. And that's why practices like Tai Chi, for example, are so important, because they are specifically to do that, just that. And that reminds me, last year around the same time, I was actually in Jamaica doing for the first time Qigong classes, and it was absolutely beautiful. So that's actually the spirit talking to me through Aisha. I need to get back to that.
I love Qigong. So movement is another one, and there are many others as well. We are going to have more videos coming that are going to talk about this. We're going to talk a lot about the inner child, healing the inner child. That's something that we're going to talk about next. And we're going to continue to have these conversations, and we definitely want to hear what your thoughts are on this conversation. Let us know. Do you feel aligned with your inner child? Is your inner child a part of your daily life or part of your daily existence? Do you have that relationship with your inner child
and your higher self?
Yes, and same for your higher self. We would definitely love to hear your perspectives. Let us know in the comments, or go to Instagram and find us there and send us a DM. If you're shy and you don't want to comment on a public post, we'd want to see your DMs as well. And of course, another option is to email us, the solsistas@gmail.com. So we definitely want to hear from you. We want to really create a community of sisters who are there, who are growing together, who are evolving together, expanding together, who are learning new ways to love ourselves, so we can bring those new ways to the community and love on each other.
Absolutely. And of course, if there are other ways that which there are many, we know, so other ways that you may have engaged to access more acceptance and joy in your life through those relationships with your inner child and your higher self, let us know. We'd love to hear it, because add your voice to the conversation and share with us what your experience has been and other things that we didn't touch on, because we want to learn from you too.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's it for now.
I think that's it. So guess what? Looking at Aisha and her fun, playful, she loves wigs, right?
Yeah.
She loves her wigs. So I was looking at this today, and I think I'm going to step out. And one of these days, y'all going to see me in a wig. I'm going to try.
Let me tell you, I love wigs because, again, that's the playful side.
Yeah.
Some days you wake up and you don't want to just be ordinary you. You want to be, today I want to be Rapunzel me.
Rapunzel it is.
So yes, it's very fun to just throw a wig on and just be someone else for the day.
Hey, and it's all about that. Whatever brings you joy, whatever allows you to tap into that play, we're all in a positive way. We're all here for it. Right?
Absolutely.
So it's been another great one, Aisha. Yes.
So thank you guys again for tuning in and watching till the end. If you're still here with us, if you see this part of the video, know that we love you so much. We're so excited about this journey that we're on, our own personal journeys, as well as the collective journey, and just seeing how we literally reshape seeing how we reshape this beautiful world that we live in.
One conversation at a time.
One conversation at a time.